Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and I would like to welcome Minister Lynch to the House this evening. I do agree with Senator O'Donnell that on this day with this important legislation that it would be great to see more people in the Seanad. I think it is probably, I know from my own personal, in my own personal opinion, this is one of the highlights
Speakers,
of
go
the
on,
day.
come into the chamber here. Whoever wants to speak can come in. There is nobody prohibited from speaking.
When we have the opportunity to debate the assisted decision-making bill in the Seanad. I, like many others, have been seeking progress on this legislation since we entered the House.
Senator Morton, without interruption.
When it was included in the programme for government. I do understand that legislation takes time, and also the importance for everyone's sake that legislation is correct. And I must say, Minister, I'd like to commend you at this stage that I think great care and attention, and I know that amendments have been carried out to ensure that the legislation will be correct when it goes through. I welcome the fact that the bill, when it was in, as I said, when it was in the Dáil in recent weeks, and that amendments and changes that were necessary have been accepted, including the removal of informal decision-making or acts in good faith, and that the bill now looks very different from it did in its original appearance. This is a vital piece of legislation for people who have difficulty in making decisions without help. Most importantly, it provides for the abolition of the adult wards of court system and will be replaced by a less intrusive framework managed by the Decision Support Service. When it is enacted, it will be a major step forward for Ireland to ratify the UN Conventions on the Rights of People with Disabilities. Very few things in life are black and white. None of us know when our capacity will be impaired through accident, illness, disability or old age. Those of us here today are fortunate that making the decision for us doesn't require someone else's approval or consent. However, for people who have reduced capacity or those who require someone to assist them with decisions, this legislation will ensure that the person's will and preferences are respected as far as possible. I welcome that this bill repeals the Marriage of Lunatics Act 1811 and the Lunacy Regulation Ireland Act in 1871. This archaic, insulting language and terminology, thankfully, will be removed, along with the words which refer to people as being idiots and of unsound mind, and left long in the past where it belongs. There are currently over 2,500 people in Ireland with intellectual disability, brain injury or mental illness who are wards of court under this long, outdated legislation. In 2014, 322 people were made ward of court, an increase in previous year's numbers. Could I just ask you, Minister, to outline the supports that will be in place for people who will be discharged from wardship? I think it's going to be a major upheaval for some people. It can be very challenging, not just for the people who will come out of the system, but also for family members who may require guidance and even counselling. It is also very important that this bill provide for advanced healthcare directives, allowing a person to express their preferences and choices regarding their treatment if and when the time comes that they will lack the capacity to express their wishes. And this is so important. The guiding principles are intended to safeguard the autonomy and dignity of the person with impaired capacity. And while I do know that even questions around this functional test, which outlines a person's capacity, and I do appreciate, I know, as I said, I want to say what I want to say here in the second stage, and that when it comes to the next stage, that you will look at some of these areas. But I do welcome the fact that each intervention will be taken on an individual basis. A person might lack the ability to make a decision in one matter at one point in time, but that doesn't necessarily mean that this will be the case in future time. I welcome that the bill recognises that capacity to make decisions can fluctuate. A presumption of capacity will hold unless the contrary is shown. Where capacity to make a decision is in question, the person can avail of a decision-making assistance agreement, co-decision-making agreement, or another person can apply to be a decision-making representative. No intervention will be made unless deemed completely necessary. Any act or decision must also be done in a way which will be least restrictive to the person, and all consideration to a person's will and desires must be given in effect. And I think, Minister, you've made it out very comprehensively today. And as I said, all of us, we don't know the day or the hour, but it is good and it is so important that I think that we know that into the future what way things are. And I think you referred as well to people with intellectual disability, and for those that do look after people with intellectual disability, I know that what you want is you want the best for your loved one. That when you're gone, that things are in place, that they can make the decisions, that they mightn't be able to speak or they mightn't be able to communicate, but that you know that the person that's there to support them to live as independent and to be treated as equally as possible. I welcome your clarification this evening that you intend to transfer jurisdiction to the Circuit Court when things need to go to the courts, so as to reduce legal costs arising for donors and attorneys, because that was something that, just when I was reading, I think it is imperative that cost would not be a barrier, and that if legal aid is needed, that it is provided. Minister, I would like to thank you for your clarification and obvious attention to detail in the Chamber tonight. I commend your commitment to the bill. I welcome your openness to amendments at report stage to ensure that this bill, though a long time coming, will ensure that our most vulnerable will be at the heart of their own decisions regarding their own life. And as I said, to me, this is one of the most important days since I came into the Seanad. It's something that was something that I felt committee. It was actually the reason to come in, and I know, with the help of a lot of people that are here in the gallery this evening, how hard that they have worked. And I don't like singling people out, but I know from Inclusion Ireland, my work with them, from Angela Edgehill, who's here from Hospice Ireland, and from other people from the Hospice Foundation, just how hard people do work to ensure that we get equality.
Senator O'Flaherty.